Hi, thanks so much for having me. My name is Michele Neitz. I'm a professor of law in San Francisco at Golden Gate University School of Law. I also teach law at Hastings and as a visiting faculty there. And my interest in blockchain started a couple years ago, and I'm happy to talk about the blockchain law class I taught last spring, which was the first blockchain law class taught at a law school in San Francisco. And I've also been a member with Ben of the California Blockchain Working Group. So I'm excited to be here.
Hi, my name is Ben Bartlett, and thanks for having me. I'm on the City Council in Berkeley, and I'm a partner in Tackett Bartlett LLP. And I'm fascinated by blockchain technology, and I have been for a few years now. And I made my mark in the field, crafting legislation to create blockchain-based microbonds for the city of Berkeley. And then that led to working with people in the industry, and then most recently serving on the California Blockchain Working Group, where I worked with Michele to deliver some policy recommendations to the state of California.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the second edition of Reimagine 2020. I'm your host today, Adam, with a couple colleagues of mine in the space. Very happy to have them join us and take time out of their day. If you happen to miss the first conference back in May, Reimagine kicked this off with 75 plus interviews, various discussions, over 10 panels. Feel free to tune into ri2020.io, or you can visit Reimagine 2020, the YouTube channel, where you can catch all 4 interviews. But at the moment, let me go ahead and welcome back Professor Neitz. I had her on the first time. If you want to know her background or a little bit more, again, visit ri2020.io. You can catch her full panel there. Professor, nice to have you back. Thank you for joining.
It's great to be here. I love MouseBelt, and I love what you guys are doing, especially during this tough time. So thanks for doing it.
We got to do what we got to do. And Ben, I know you got your hands full here. You're on mute, but welcome to the show. Glad to have you. Thank you for joining us today.
Thank you for having me. Really excited, and my daughter in car is happy as well. Hopefully not too happy.
Awesome. Well, I mean, during COVID, we got to do what we got to do. This is kind of a time capsule, right? So I think, 50 years down the road, your daughter might see this and say, hey, I was quarantined. At the same time, I was doing blockchain interviews. Like, it's all good.
Right. We'll make a coin.
Awesome. So just to kick things off here, I've known you guys now for quite some time here. We've all been chatting. I come from the industry side. You guys come from the legal side. So this is a great discussion, great topic, various themes here. But I think I wanted to focus on a couple things. I want to know, your guys' perspectives and opinions. Professor, you're teaching it. What's going on the education side? And both of you together have been with the state of California, working with the Blockchain Working Group, for the last, 12 months or quite some time, putting out the report recently, which has been great. So many use cases, so many applications that you collectively have put together. So, Professor, give me a quick, what are you doing now? What are your motivations on doing this? I know you kicked off the class at your respective school. How are things going so far?
So the class was really fun, and I talked a bit about it in May, and as the class has wrapped up, I've actually received inquiries from students over the summer who are asking me if I'm going to teach it again. I might have a wait list again. So I think educators need to know that the interest among our students is there, especially in law schools. This is an industry, and Ben can talk to this, that really needs good lawyers. And really needs people who will be creative in helping the government to advance regulation. And so I think that should start in the schools. And I think this is where I really feel an affinity for MouseBelt, because you're trying to get blockchain education more widespread, and I'm trying to do the same thing in schools. And so, there are more schools, more law schools who are teaching this. I think 5 years from now, every law school is going to be offering at least an emerging tech law class that includes blockchain. And so it's been kind of fun to be on the front lines of it and to see the interest develop.
And you know what I noticed too that I love, and I've had multiple discussions, and your whole team came, faculty and your staff came to visit, and we had that meeting. And one thing that I took away really was just the support you had. Can you just shed some light a little bit on it seems like they fully supported you on running a program, obviously COVID hit, so it switched some things up this past year, but it seems like they gave you a green light to kind of do your own thing with some of your assistants there, that your TAs. Can you kind of talk about like the communication? It seemed like it was very positive.
Yes, Golden Gate School of Law was really excited about this idea. And once they realized there was student interest in it, that made a huge difference. And so they very much supported me. We've been talking about doing hybrid classes between business and law related to blockchain. There's a lot of creative energy that could really flow out of a successful class. We did end up switching in March to being solely online, as everyone did. And the very last class that I taught in person, we ended up doing it via Zoom, but I was already on campus that day, the last day before we shut down. We had a very special guest lecturer in the class who was Mr. Ben Bartlett, who came and spoke to my students. And it was really just such a nice thing for him to do as the world was like falling down around us that week. It's fallen down a little more now, obviously, but that's what was so fun for me, is to really kind of bring friends in and to help my students recognize that networking is huge and meeting people is huge. And even more importantly, everybody I've met in the blockchain space has just been so friendly, and lawyers are not always the friendliest people maybe, but that is not true for blockchain lawyers. It's just been a really neat group of people that I've been able to meet through this. So I encourage my students, get out there, get in touch with people, attend conferences like this where, reach out to people. And I think there's a real community, especially in San Francisco and the Bay Area, that's been built around this that would welcome any students who are interested.
And you're leading the way, right, with this blockchain, like this whole blockchain movement, right, of integrating this into curriculum. What's the inspiration there for you? I guess, when did that come about for you to say, hey, you know what, I'm going to go to the dean, I'm going to go to my, to the people that kind of put these courses together and present blockchain? And what did they think, actually?
Well, I first thought about this in late 2017. And when I kind of did a little preliminary research, I felt like there wasn't enough to teach. Like there just wasn't enough. It was all speculation, like Silk Road was all over the place. And I just thought, I'm not going to get approval for a class on that, right? And I don't know what I would fill it with. So I kind of kept an eye on the industry, but I didn't dive in really deep until about early 2018. When I started kind of 2018. And that's when I really started like kind of thinking, all right, there's more laws, states are becoming engaged in this. I think this is something where there will be jobs for lawyers. That was my guiding force, because I think for professors who want to teach this, I think the argument to make to your administrators is there's jobs out there for our grads, right? Totally. And we need to know this in order to get those jobs. And that's the argument I made, and the law school really agreed that there is enough of an industry here that we can train people for it.
I don't know what the rates have gone up or down, but at one point it was like $1,000 an hour, because like you said, it was more hands-on, and you were spent most of your time probably going through the nitty-gritty of, because ICOs and tokens and utility token versus security at that point, and then like structures of decentralized operations, it's all kind of crazy. So no, I'm just happy, that we met, and we've been able to engage, and like, you invited me to a class, and I was
just gonna say, my very first guest lecture was you. And you came on so short notice. It was the first week of the semester. I feel like people should know this. The first week of the semester, my students were asking me all kinds of technical questions. And I thought, I need a developer. I need somebody in here who can answer these sorts of technical questions. And I reached out to you, Adam, and you came in with Zane, who charted the smart contract. He coded the smart contract on the whiteboard in the classroom. And my students, like half of them were like, this is amazing. And half of them were like, oh my God, I'm terrified. Am I going to, is this on the exam? Like, oh my, what am I going to do with this? So that was such a big help, because I think that meeting the two of you is what law school should be, right? We should be meeting people in the industry. We should be meeting practicing attorneys. We should be getting out of the building and really getting out there into the world and the community as students.
No, definitely. That was a great time. I called the lead dev for all of you, watching here. Brought in the lead dev for Ethereum Classic, and that was just a good turnout. He had a good time. We had a good time. So let's go over here to Ben.
I'm asking you again in January, so get ready, both of you.
Oh yeah, we're happy. So Ben, welcome to the show, man. We've been chatting for a couple of years now, and you've been working on some projects, which we'll get into in a little bit. But how did you get into this space? And as of more recently, in the last couple of years, what have you been doing actually?
Well, thank you, Adam, and it's good to hear Michele, because it's similar sort of trajectory, I guess. But so I'd heard about blockchain technology and crypto and Bitcoin really years ago, but I didn't quite understand it.
So yeah, you've had this class. Another thing too. What kind of interests? I mean, it seems like you have a wait list for some of these students.
Yes. So I think here's the challenge for a lot of students. For a lot of students, they're really kind of interested in technology, and they may have a coding background, and they may understand way more of the technology than their professors do. But for other students who went to law school because they don't like math that much, and there's a fair number of folks in law schools who do that, it's very intimidating to think about learning a technology that has a high learning curve like blockchain does. And so I have found this with students and with legislators, that the high learning curve is an impediment, and people feel like they, I don't know, as Ben was just saying, if you feel like you don't understand it, but you're sort of interested in it on the margins, it is helpful to have a class that just will have like a deep dive in, and it's sink or swim, and you've got to figure it out. And that I think has helped some of our students.
That's great. And Ben, as you were kind of, diving into your experience and how you started to get involved, go ahead and continue on there.
Well, yeah, we were at one of my old job, we were trying to raise funds for electric vehicle infrastructure. So how to pay for thousands of charging stations, right? And we kept running into different financing issues, and it was complicated. We were looking for something else, and I read about these ICOs that were happening at the time. This must have been kind of the start of the Ethereum jump off, right? The ICO wave. And okay, well, why can't we do that? So I explored it, and that's when I first learned about how they work and what it's all about. But I wasn't able to get traction there because I was still too far removed from the ability to do it. And then I kind of just forgot about it until I was in office a year or two later. We decided to utilize technology to create bonds, and let the blockchain technology be a platform to issue digital bonds, and we call them microbonds. And that right there took me so deep into learning about the industry and connecting with people like you and everyone else, and learning about it and crafting really first of its kind legislation. And that really was great. It got me into, I guess, the conversation around the world as I was consulting other countries and corporations and entities in various countries in America. And then from there, it's, it really became a passion. I helped form I joined a law group and kind of rebranded it, and all devoted to leveraging technology to do these digital offerings and to help grow the technology. And, whenever possible, steer it towards, higher uses than our current use of technology, like environmental finance in particular. And then was appointed, thankfully, to the California Blockchain Working Group, where I had the honor of working with Michele. And I worked hard on that. We all did. And, I was able to write, I think, 11 different recommendations in the report around different financial elements and tools to help, really help change the living situation for people. Because, the technology is meant to help people. And I think that the current technology scheme has drifted from that somewhat. And so if this is the new internet, and if this is the new money, I feel it's important that we apply a human-centered vision to it. And that's really what my work's about.
And so you guys are both part of this working group. Did you guys have, what was your guys' role within this? So let me rewind here. For all of you watching, my guest speakers here are part of the California State blockchain working group. And how long have you guys been working on this, the report for? A couple of years, 12 months, or?
So I think, Michele, was it, what do you say, 13, 14 months? We just finished.
Yeah.
We started in August.
Okay, great. So yeah, about a year. Great. And you know, I have some beginners watching. I have some novice, you know, audience. I have some experts ranging from developers and entrepreneurs. And you know, the wave right now is the DeFi space, and we keep hearing, you know, Bitcoin, and which is not the end. It's not a one size fit like campaign, right? Blockchain touches. It's a technology that touches corporations. We're leveraging it for the state, which we'll get into. It's kind of developed this whole cryptocurrency space, and then, you know, financial services and a whole healthcare, energy sector, all the above, right? And so what I want to highlight on our discussion today is just your hard work working with the state, and just showcasing that the technology, you know, we see all the bells and whistles and the shiny objects, and then on the back end too, working with officials and public officials and agencies on how to implement and integrate this thing. Because right now, you just printed out the report, and we'll touch on, we're still trying to identify use cases, right? And how do we build it, and how much does it cost to do these things, which is, you know, it can get pretty pricey, and you don't want to waste money and funds like that. So did both of you, now to go back to the report that was just published I think in July, did you both have this, what were your roles, individual respective roles for being in the group? And we'll start with you, Professor.
Well, it was a really cool group of people. Like, I just really felt excited to be there. And for me, it was like going to a class every time we had a meeting. I walked out knowing so much more than I did when I walked in. And so that was really fun, because it was a bunch of really creative people with expertise in different areas. And so my role was one of the 3 legal representatives on the group. And I was tasked with really thinking about what would the regulation actually look like related to specific areas. So when you have a group of 20 people, the meetings went long, and you can't always reach a deep dive or consensus on every single issue that we wanted to consider. And so I think one of the unique things about our report is the breadth of it, and how many issues we thought about that other states have not even considered yet. And that's why I do think our report is a pretty exciting document and can really serve as a role model for other states who haven't been able to do that type of research. So I was assigned 3 main areas. One was my favorite, which was ethical considerations, because I've written about ethics in blockchain, and really asking kind of what would be the guiding principles that would enable us to implement blockchain in an ethical way in our state. Thinking about things like equity and accessibility, and, you know, how can we really make blockchain a fair technology for both users and developers and states who choose to use it, especially in California. I also wrote the chapter about voting, which was a bit contentious, as you would imagine in 2020, right? Should we use blockchain for voting? And eventually we decided that the technology is not there yet for a high stakes election like all of our statewide elections in California would be.
And what do you mean by that? The technology in sense of the infrastructure, or like technology and performance, or both?
There's just too many vulnerabilities still in the technology, I think. And the Secretary of State said to me, not the Secretary of State, someone from their department who was in charge of voting for the state said, please don't let them advocate voting yet on the blockchain, because even online voting for us has so many vulnerabilities that we have not yet begun to understand. And if you throw blockchain onto it as well, there's just too many points at which a hack could happen.
Do they all agree? Do they all agree though that the tech, like we'll talking about blockchain, so that the technology at some point will make it makes sense?
It would be amazing if it could work. Like, I think it would be, honestly, I think the reasons to do blockchain voting also have to do with equity and access. And, you know, folks who are homebound and for whom just being able to pull up a phone and vote would enable them to feel like they're participating more in the electoral process. People like, I mean, young people, right, who are in school, or people who are working shift work, who aren't able to get the time off to go and vote. Blockchain voting would be amazing. And so theoretically, I think it's awesome.
Yeah.
practically speaking, and I did talk to professors, a professor at Lawrence Livermore, and I kind of reached out. I mean, there are like Votes is a company that's really working to try to make this happen. I think the sort of overarching decision was it's just not ready yet,
For
right?
sure. But they're open to it. But they're open to it. They see this future of integrating like online voting and.
Right. I mean, I think 10 years from now, I hope that we'll be able to get there. The U.S., like the post office is looking into a blockchain patent for mail-in ballots right now. I mean, there's interest in the government to do it.
The post office has been working on it since I think like 2017, 16. Not the voting aspect, but they've been looking, literally the USPS has been looking into blockchain for a few years. I had a call with them, I don't know, 8 months ago. Offering them support, really. I was like, can we help you guys? Because it looks like you might need a little bit of technical support there. But
I need to call them back, Adam.
try to get them
they might need to talk to you again.
I try to get them on this conference, but maybe next time. Didn't mean to cut you off. So, yeah, it looks like you're working on the voting aspects and they're open to it. And you foresee the technology helping us out on the voting aspect where you don't have to physically go drop your ballot in or mail it in or whatever.
I mean, when our kids are 18, how cool will it be for them to be able to vote on their phones? Because they're going to be doing everything else on their phones.
Talk about just kind of being involved. Obviously, hopefully the idea would be is to increase votes. Like right now, not everybody votes. So that might increase, you might feel like you have some sense of skin in the game. They should feel that now. But to be able to do it from your phone, you're getting everybody involved here.
Right. And young people are a block that don't often vote, even though their votes can make such a difference. And so I do see it in the future. I think right now it's a very high stakes experiment, especially in our polarized climate, And so my co-author ended up having to leave the group, but his initial thought on this was, well, what about like a BART board election or like a school board election, like something that's a little bit less high stakes than a statewide election or a city council election where there's just so much more at stake. So I think what we're going to see are small pilots to try to scale the technology. Perfect.
And what about you, Ben? Let's get to you a little bit on your role within the group. And I know you just said you wrote, a few of the applications and POCs and pilots. So yeah, shed some light on what your role was and how you got involved.
Oh, sure. Thank you. And I want just to comment on the voting piece. That was something, of course, we were all super excited about. And as Michele did the research with her team, it did look like, not really the right time. But that was something we really were hopeful for. And I do believe that we will be there. And Michele, I saw that the USPS just filed a patent this week.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess we'll be getting there soon. And it's important to realize too, right? This is something that if you pay close attention to this race, the presidential race, there's two streams of thought in the country. There's one stream that says, just let everyone vote right away. Another one says people have to earn the vote. You want people that care and people that do research and people who are informed to vote. So I think we're going to have to deal with that conversation when it comes to ubiquitous cell phone-based voting. There'll be a lot of pushback. It'll be interesting to see, but I'm sure that democracy will win. So my experience in the working group, I was really excited about it because I've never been on anything that high level before. This was, a state-created think tank.
Yeah.
Essentially, right? And with all these big shots like Michele and and the head of Hyperledger and all these big people who are like supreme experts in the field. So I was excited to learn from them and to learn how. And then from the state people, the state apparatus, they had the top people that can, convene and synthesize disparate viewpoints into reports. So observing the way they worked with this motley group was a real learning experience. I learned a lot. As Michele said, we covered all these topics. The breadth of what we covered was amazing, from healthcare to energy to finance to voting. And so I focused on the elements that kind of drove me there. The wealth building, the poverty creation, the poverty elimination, and wealth building elements that come with new money. They can come. Because we know from the ICO revolution that for the first time, the geographic stranglehold on investment being centered around the Bay Area, and particularly the west edge of the Bay Area, the Stanford area, now is blowing apart, and projects and people and founders and were funded all over the world. And that alone, if you look at the map of the money distribution, you can see why blockchain is important. And then building on top of that, all the smart contracts, and you're just enabling more people to get in the game. So so I focus on all those elements, and so I wrote a number of pieces on there with people, and Michele was helpful as well too. And so I focused on municipal finance, public finance, a blockchain innovation zone to spur new ideas and creativity if they're working towards a public good. Worked on corporate personhood for DAOs, distributed autonomous organizations. These are these automated DeFi entities that they're limited by what they can do because they don't have any liability shields or ability to really buy insurance or move as a group because there's no corporation behind them. So allowing them to become corporations, as long as they're benefit corporations, right, and working for the public good. And then what I'm really proud of that I've been working on developing and releasing and getting buy-in, this concept of a Cal coin, a state distribution platform for benefits and other things. So those are the big ones I'm really proud of.
Nice, and maybe we can dig in on a couple of them, or one of them that you're really kind of putting some effort into even more, right, beyond kind of the report. And one thing that I kind of want to highlight as well, as I'm listening to the both of you, and for our audience, like paying attention here and tuning in, is that we're all still learning. We're still trying to understand, right? I think some people, even for me, I was like, was I late to the game, right? It was only like 2017. Even now, it's like, am I too late at certain times? But the whole grand scheme of things, we're just in this bubble here, and we kind of see that things move fast, especially in the blockchain space. Things are moving quick. Innovation is happening, at a rapid pace. And so, for everybody watching, like, don't think that you're too late, right? It's just, we all do, and I've had all these interviews going on, and still to this day, everybody's reading blogs, everybody's reading articles, white papers, trying to look up, blockchain is a buzzword, but really distributed systems has been around a long time. Cryptography has been around a long time. And now it's just kind of all coming together. So I think the research, there's still so much to do, so much to read up, and we're all still learning. So for those watching, as you can tell, we have, massive groups of intelligent individuals trying to understand how to use it, how to implement it, how to, make sure that, it's ethically, like, morally okay for society. And then you're trying to, help with the wealth gap and access to capital and money. So, let's kind of jump into some of the things that some of this report, I know we touched on a few topics here, but aside from that, is there anything that you want to talk about, Professor, like that you want to shed some light on during this experience right now?
Sure. I do want to follow up and ask Ben about Calcoin, because I will say he gets the credit for the name, which is the coolest name of any cryptocurrency around. So I want to make it happen just for the name. But I think a weird thing, here's what I want to ask developers to start doing. Think outside of the box of crypto. States are looking at this in areas that are not quite as sexy as crypto, right? Like marriage records and birth certificates. I mean, that's an area that California is already moving forward in. One of the state divisions that I found to be the most excited to work with us was part of the Secretary of State Archives Division, because they're looking to digitize archives. And if they were to have multiple parties, within the state, either county records, or if they were, let's say the West Coast states were to build a consortium and put all of their records on a blockchain where anyone could access, like, that is actually providing educational access to our history for people, for students, for, scholars, for politicians, for anybody. And so, but you're not going to read about that. Like, it's not blowing up on Twitter, right? Like, there's a role for archives with blockchain. And so I do think that one of the things I'm taking away out of the learning group is that, or the working group, is that there's room for blockchain in all kinds of areas. You just got to be creative and figure out what the use case would be. And if you can present it well, states are going to listen to you, and the federal government is going to listen to you, because we're all still figuring this out. But with that, I do want to ask you about CalCoin, Ben, because I don't want us to, I want people to know this exciting idea and that you've created.
Oh, thank you. So and you're exactly right, by the way. Just looking at anything in the current landscape, if it can be made more efficient, blockchain might have an application. So with the CalCoin, we were looking for essentially a way to speed distribution of aid, because during that time, COVID was hitting, the federal aid was coming down, the CARES Act, and different elements. And what was happening was that the friction involved was the same friction we talk about all the time in blockchain, that blockchain is trying to address. And so the friction was there, the fees were there, and so as I looked at that, I was like, well, you know what? There's no reason why 1.5 million people 6 weeks later are still waiting for their unemployment benefits. When we know you can do an instant transfer via this technology. We do it all the time. And so we thought it through, and because the ledger can hold any digital record, it can even hold beyond money. It can hold housing vouchers, pieces of paper. It can have COVID test results, things like that. And so the idea is to have a state apparatus to distribute benefits to people without being tied to a computer or a phone, to something they can access in the cloud via their own identity and use it. And that, of course, addresses the fraud elements, because you can program things and where they go and how they're spent. You can track better what's going on to make sure your people are being helped, and you can engage in. You can even merge that with the unbanking solutions for the unbanked. And the working group, we talk a lot about the unbanked on this period as well. And so you could even merge that with helping these struggling people get financial literacy and get access to financial products via this distributed, super cheap way to do it. And so, yeah, it's super exciting. We baked it through, and we looked at some other places. So New York had a public Venmo that they're trying to do, and so we're kind of in line with that, and the Fed coin that's talking about, and the China coin. And so the platform is meant to be adaptable to many situations, but right away it's meant to address the fact that every dollar of aid, I think only 5 cents goes to the person, with all the hands involved, right? And so this is meant to get more aid to where it's needed, because in this pandemic recovery era, budgets will be constrained. It's going to be a lot harder, and need will be even greater. So we got to maximize every dollar of aid, and this is one way to do it. And so I've been out there pushing it and talking about it. And I have a major bank looking at it right now.
Oh, really?
But the first bank had to wanted to do it. They were all in, but they had to pass because they're not covered by the OCC charter, which now says banks can hold crypto. This is a state chartered bank, which is covered by the FDIC, and the FDIC does not insure crypto, so they had to pass on it. But they kicked it over to another larger national bank that is covered with this special designation called OCC, under the OCC, Office of the Currency Controller.
Comptroller and Currency.
Yeah, Comptroller and Currency, and so they're right now discussing it. They're executives.
And what are some of the barriers here? Like, what are some of the challenges that you're seeing to get this to gain some more traction? Obviously, you're gaining traction, but what are some of the feedback that you're getting? Positive, negative?
Well, so far it's been positive. It's just, one, do they have you'd have to go through a bank, because banks are the conduits for aid distribution.
Mm-hmm.
So they have to want to streamline, right, for one. But I make the case that they now are picking up new customers, and they also can meet these. They have these requirements under law to lend into poor areas, and now those requirements are even more pronounced as more people are poor, and this provides a mechanism through distributed right? Distributed finance methodology to reach those people and get them debt products as well as aid. So they like that, and they see the value in that as well. So I think that it's just the only obstacle has been really the fear of holding digital assets. Yeah. So do these have to be assets? And that's such a tricky thing to explain to a novice to this industry, right? That we're gonna have to just keep it real simple.
I forgot what I was going to say. No, but you're totally right. The fear of holding assets, and we're talking about custody.
Yeah, custody.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And it's the bank is responsible for this digital asset, and so far the FDIC has not announced that it will cover losses of those materials. And so certain banks are good. Certain banks are chartered FDIC. Other banks are chartered under this Office of the Currency Comptroller, and they have permission now to carry them. So I need one of those banks.
And seems like you're on your way. No, that's interesting.
It would be interesting. Can I just add,
Go ahead.
So when I first heard about this in July, my first thought, and I can't help myself as a former litigator, was, here come the lawyers, right? Like, this is going to be one breach and, one hack, and like those banks are going to face such liability. So I wonder if within the innovation zone, there would be a way to shield liability, or to have some sort of sharing of liability happening just to get it off the ground.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, one of the things that we talked about, if you remember, and I'm not sure if it made it to the report, but we should talk about it with the community, is our insurance pools and things like that, where members of the community contribute to an insurance pool to cover losses. In the state, of course, in the innovation zone, allowing this risk taking, provided there's insurance and clear communication with people whose tokens you're holding or investors' money you're with, things like that. You're exactly right.
You know what? It's funny you bring up this insurance pool and insurance, because I was literally talking. You guys have talked with my co-founder and CTO Galen, and I brought up the same thing about insurance, just from the aspect of the perspective of like adoption, increasing adoption and utility and usage. And I feel like one of the things that, people would be more willing to use crypto in a way is insurance. I think that's one, we all count on our bank, like we have fraud or there's an issue, people steal money and the bank goes down, we're covered. And I think some of that peace of mind in some kind of product, whether I know there's insurance on smart contracts, for a period of time and making sure like the escrow accounts are fine. But I was also talking about insurance of like custody and like private keys or the assets that are involved, because I think that's one way that people will use it, or maybe enterprise banks or enterprises, corporations will be more willing to, like you brought up the litigation part, or just kind of like the issues surrounding if there's a hack, they want to be covered as well. And I think there needs to be some like some middle ground there to kind of satisfy both sides of the coin here.
Well, one key thing I think that is going to have to happen is the transfer agent concept, and so we worked with this with our municipal bond program, and I think that's probably the way it's going to be most effective. Is essentially some entity or digital program has a registered ownership of each token, and if it gets stolen, it gets dissolved and reassembled in its rightful wallet. And I think getting to that point of signature and identity is probably going to be integral, because people can't be losing money like this with these hackers. Like we know right now at our banks, our big banks, where you probably have a bank account. If someone robs that bank and takes the money out, it's going to be replaced. Right. If it gets hacked, if I take my bank card to the store and they copy the numbers and go run up a shopping spree, the money's going to get replaced to me. So that same functionality has to happen for people, otherwise it's not going to work.
Yeah, no, totally agree. And even within this report, we touched on records, right? That's kind of like some low-hanging fruit. We're talking about this CalCoin, which is kind of even more complicated or more involved, like structure. What's in between? Like, are there any other areas outside of voting that like require? I'm sure everything requires some technology and some innovation, but were there other topics that were like, hey, this area, there's an opportunity within, I've seen on the report like real estate, agriculture, the energy sector. Were there any like more weighted? The technology's not there. We got to start with the low hanging fruit. But what were some of the priorities that you guys saw, or that the state was like, you know what, like we need to save costs here or generate revenue here? Was there any of that discussion going on?
Michele, you had some good ones.
Yeah, I think the energy and natural resources one is really exciting and the reason I think that is because it goes along with our long-standing policies in California of conservation, right? And so for me as a professor, it's always really exciting to see regulation following policy, like to be able to have the thoughtful discussion about the policy first and then have the regulation follow, because that ends up being successful regulation. When you do it the other way around, again, here come the lawyers, right? Like this is it. So you can tell when there's been thought put into it. So in my mind, the two biggest areas we're going to see exploding with blockchain in California are going to be the low-hanging fruit ones, right? Yep. But also healthcare. The healthcare thing is huge. I mean, the amount of R&D that's going into pharmaceutical blockchain development is pretty extraordinary. And it can affect everything from insurance to supply chain for drug management. There's just a lot of aspects of the healthcare industry. And frankly, it's going to be well funded right now because we're in the middle of a global pandemic. So whatever we can do to try to, as Ben was saying, track COVID results, right? Once the vaccine is out there, how are we going to know where the vaccine has been properly delivered or whether it's been siphoned off? That's basic supply chain management, and that can all be done through a blockchain.
And regarding the healthcare, like, is there a lot of support there? Because I just had an interview with Florian, who was in the healthcare space, and there's a lot of like dynamics in there, which is interesting. But and you're talking about some supply chain with pharmaceuticals. We're also talking about siloed data and information between insurance providers and doctors and hospitals. Is that what we're talking about as well? You're talking about some of those things? It
touches on all of it.
Yeah.
Right? So like the supply chain stuff that proof of concept has already been done.
Exactly.
It's already up and running.
Exactly.
Right? I mean, it's being used internationally, right? In refugee camps. I mean, that's done. So we can just pick that up and move it over to help with COVID. And I know that there's people working on this right now. So that to me is very exciting. The other thing, and this is just my own personal opinion because I worked on it, part of civic engagement is not just voting, right? So I know that there are engineers right now who are looking at the Black Lives Matter movement and the racial and gender justice movements that are happening right now and thinking creatively about maybe one example I've heard, maybe we can use blockchain to track police reporting, right? Maybe we can use blockchain to track arrests that are going on. I mean, there's just, incredible.
I just had an interview same thing. So we were talking about the issue is trying to get the stakeholders, right? So for those watching, like blockchain is a peer-to-peer thing, like a trustless thing. It's good for multiple parties that are involved in some kind of consortium or partnership that don't trust each other, and we're using this technology to get bypast that. But you bring up a good point, and they've been working on this. Just call it distributed ledger for like records and like history of reports for other agencies within the counties and stuff to see like what you just brought up, kind of like the policing efforts and like records. And so thanks for bringing that up because I'm having some discussions around that. So I didn't mean to cut you off, but I'm glad there's, all these discussions are going on and you're at the heart of it, advocating for some of this technology as a use case, as an application for the social good.
Mm-hmm. That's where the principles, like having ethical principles really comes into play because that movement happened. I mean, it was starting to happen, but we didn't devote a whole section of the report to it, right? Because the report was basically written in April and May. And so, but if we have principles in the report that say these are our guiding principles, we want to focus on sustainability. That's going to bring in healthcare and energy conservation. If we want to focus on equity and accessible distribution and making, our society a more fair and just place, then when a new use case pops up like it did this summer, you can say, all right, we know what this technology can do. Let's try to apply it to this use case. So to me, that's why the report will last, is because it's not just a snapshot of what the use cases could be. It's also, let's think about what our overarching goals for California will be.
Yeah, exactly. You're exactly right.
Sorry, go ahead, Ben.
Yeah, I love the healthcare piece. That's definitely where we're headed. It's a system that's so complicated, with so much, friction again, right, between all the players and the payments. You can automate payments this way. You can store records. It's very difficult to get your records pulled up when you go visit anyone on the healthcare providing chain. I
even think on the patient side, right?
Yeah.
We're talking about the back end operations of like silo data and information and the hassle of everybody. Only certain people have the records and it's all paper. We're trying to digitize that, of course. But even on the patient side, there's some ownership. So a little bit of privacy, a little bit of control that benefits. Both spectrums of the the vendors and supplier, the insurance providers, and then also the patients, to have a little sense of control, which leads into, we don't have time for it, but leads into another surveys of trying to extract data for the pharmaceutical companies to have appropriate kind of accurate information on these technical trials. I can't think of the word, technical trials and all that, right? Right,
and we're going to have to lower costs and expand coverage. So you have pronounced need, but less money. So this is in my mind, this and the financing are going to be the largest plays right now in the industry. So you see the DeFi, right, approaching the financial world, and I guarantee the healthcare market will be a huge growth opportunity for blockchain professionals.
Well, the other thing that I've had with another healthcare, individual in the blockchain space is that, and one of the questions I asked was, there's so many applications, and it just seems so obvious, right? But I think the regulation and the policy hasn't caught up yet, because I do see, these healthcare applications on blockchain and tackling some of these issues. But what I had asked was, I was just curious, and I assumed that it was regulation and policy kind of stunting that growth a little bit. Trying to figure out how to appropriately apply, legislature to it, because I've seen all these startups and projects, and I know, but I haven't seen the masses adopt it yet, and I think there's a gap there still.
Yeah, and honestly, and maybe Michele can speak to this, but with healthcare, the laws are not that onerous. There's HIPAA, right? It's privacy. Yeah. You just have to take reasonable efforts to ensure the privacy of the data you're working with, the patient information. Because we have telemedicine now. We've had it for years, right? You can get your tonsils looked at right now on your phone by somebody in another part of the world, and that's fine. So this is the same idea. It's just getting buy-in from the incumbent industries, because they make a lot of money the way it is.
Well, that was the other part of the discussion.
Yeah.
It's probably for another time, but the business models were we're applying this technology, Web 3.0 to Web 2.0, and they don't jive, right? We're in this transformation period, but you're right. And I think the way we think about the blockchain space doesn't match up with how industry operates on how many patients do I need to see, to cover the bills and make revenue and stuff like that, right, Ben?
Yeah, exactly right. And but all of this is made easier by new money to invest, right? Because the establishment likes it the way it is, but the new markets and the new people can fund the new iterations, new business models. But that's an issue because the investment is subject to federal legislation, And I wanted to ask Michele, because that's your expertise. What are we working with here? Are we going to be able to start investing in stuff more easily?
If Hester Pierce has her way, then we will, who's the SEC commissioner, who they call Crypto Mom. But, you know, she's kind of a lone voice at the moment. But I think we're always slower in law and regulation than technology is, right? And I think a real problem was that it was something like 80% of ICOs were fraudulent.
Yeah.
So the problem as a regulator then is you just are tempted to write the whole thing off and say, we're just not going to do this because the risk to public protection is just too high. And so, but there are, you know, I saw today actually that Germany is going to allow these digitized securities. So I think that the other countries might move faster than us. But I do think that we're going to be in a position where the agencies are going to have to collaborate. And this is actually something I was telling you folks before we started recording this, that I just finished an article that I wrote this summer, a law review article on the regulation of blockchain and the way that these agencies are just tripping over themselves to try to be first or to try to come up with a cohesive way to regulate, right? And so you have, you know, the Fed is talking about its digital dollar, and then you have the SEC trying to put out fires basically with its regulation and regulating through enforcement. And then you have Congress just, you know, who is just releasing new blockchain bills from the sky every other day. But there is no cohesive regulatory scheme. And people are fleeing the United States as a result of this. Investors are leaving because you could go to another country that has where you can actually tell your clients as a lawyer, the answer is going to be. And when you can't say that, you know, if the SEC decides that we're an asset, you know, they're going to regulate us this way. But if they decide that we fall under this other agency, then we might be regulated, you know, for a commodity, then we're going to be regulated this. Like, to have to say that to a client is really hard. And most clients are going to say, you know what, I'm just pulling up stakes. I'm going to Singapore or I'm going to Switzerland. So, So I'm advocating that we come up with some sort of I'm laying out principles. Here are the 5 pillars that you guys have to think about. And I'm planning to send the article to legislators when it's done, because I'm hoping we just need to have a cohesive voice, I think, in this. It will help the industry. Even if it's not uniformity, it will still help the industry.
So you're writing something right now on that?
Yeah, I actually have offers of publication on it right now, and I'll let you know where it lands. It's going to be a law review article that I'll put out on Twitter and everywhere when it's on social media when it's ready. That's
great. And I know we got a few minutes here. We're kind of running up on time, but last couple questions maybe. What do you work with other states? I know there's Wyoming. I know there's Washington. I think Ben brought up, like, you know, New York was trying to do like a public Venmo thing. Do you guys collaborate or work with the other states? Follow them? Do they follow you? Is there any communication amongst the communities?
So actually, yes, a lot. Ever since we drafted the blockchain bonds, people from around the states reached, and they've been following us ever since. And so yes, we do reach out. And the California report, I made a concerted effort to get it in the hands of people in different states. So yes, they do watch, and there is a communication going on.
Nice. Sorry. That's what I like to hear. I think blockchain in general, right, is a community-driven ecosystem of collaborators. So I would assume, I don't know if you wanted to say anything, Professor, on that, but that's good to hear that there is some kind of communication going on, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that the interjurisdictional competition aspect of blockchain is really fun to watch. The same thing happened with LLCs when that business entity was created. States started fighting to be the place where you'd want to incorporate or want to file for your LLC, and so we're seeing the same thing now. So it's not just international competition going on. It's, you know, California versus Wyoming versus New York. And so, but to the extent that we can cooperate, I think the whole industry will be better off. I really do.
What other states? You know, the funny thing is when I joined your class for the guest lecture, I think that's what your students were presenting, like, because I heard Kentucky and I heard, I'm kind of surprised. Are there any outside of California, Washington, Wyoming, New York, any other kind of surprising states that I'm missing?
Hawaii is there. Not surprising that Texas has done, Texas is following Wyoming. A Texas legislator that I actually quoted in my article actually says we're copying Wyoming. And then but then on top of that, we're Texas with a bigger economy. So we feel like maybe people want to come here because they could have our economy plus a Wyoming scheme. And you know what's interesting? That was a fun class. I had each student adopt a state. I'm going to have to rewrite my whole syllabus for next semester, right?
And what are we talking about as far as adoption? Like right now we talked about, I guess we narrowed it down specifically on this report and use cases and how to use it. What else is there? Like, I mean, we're in California, so maybe it doesn't apply because people want to come to Silicon Valley, the Bay Area and work here. But what other benefits are like the Texases and the Wyomings offering to drive business? Just crypto-friendly operations and like structure and fees or something like that? Like what else is, we talked about the use case report right now. What other motivations do those states have just to bring in crypto business, like start the new Silicon Valley of crypto of Wyoming?
Yes, so Wyoming's doing some really cool stuff. They are allowing folks to charter their own banks in Wyoming.
Yeah.
To compete with the New York BIT license, right? So that you can just like navigate, which the BIT license is going to get modified, but they're really competing in a cool way with it. I think the two sort of, since I know we're running short on time, the two general answers I would give are taxes, right? You can encourage behavior through taxation.
Yeah.
So there's a lot of stuff going on and related to, we won't tax you if you come to our state. And then the other thing is trying to have a crypto-friendly regulations, as you talked about, incentives.
And are we talking about like sandbox still, like regulatory sandboxes and like, we'll work with you more to the tango?
Come and experiment. We won't tax you.
Yeah.
And we'll let you sell stuff to the public,
Yeah.
Trying to avoid securities laws. Like we'll let you do stuff in our state that you may not be able to do elsewhere. Which could be really cool and like great stuff. I mean, we're hoping to do that a bit in California where great stuff could come out of it. This was actually Ben's idea on our working group to have some sort of a regulatory sandbox, what we're now calling the innovation zone. So yeah, it's a really fun area to work in, I will say. It's been really great.
Yeah, and there's a measure right now up for consideration at the state, right? So what is it? It involves tokens and status. Do you know? You're familiar with Michele?
No, I haven't seen it. Has it?
Yeah,
who
so
introduced it?
It's from Ian Calderon.
From Ian, yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's stemming from our report.
I need to look this up. Well, it has been my first week of the semester. I will say it's been a little drowning, but I will check it out. That's a really, I think Ian is great and he's leaving, unfortunately, the state.
I know.
Legislature, but we need Ben to run for higher office so that he can push us in this way.
Oh boy. Okay. Yeah. One step at a time. But I'm pretty sure it just gives it's a holiday. A period of time in which you can operate without being declared a security by the state of California, something like that. So like a sandbox kind of idea around one particular activity. So that's exciting. I just saw it flash across my phone. I haven't had a chance to read it yet.
Oh, did it just happen?
Apparently it's right now. It's under consideration.
Okay, great. I feel a little better not knowing about it if it's just happening. Okay, good.
Ben, do you talk about this stuff with your public around your local community?
Yeah, I do, but it's hard because they don't understand it. So I talk about the impacts and the effects of it, right? And the blockchain bonds it's a community finance tool. So I put it in human terms, which I think the industry needs to do anyway for people. Is get off the arcane, weird, the tech talk, right? And talk about the human-centered elements at play. So cryptographic microbonds are actually a community finance tool, right? So speaking of in real terms like that, I found it to be more effective with policymakers, people, and businesses.
No, totally. I mean, I think you have to kind of, bring some metaphors and how can you relate it to traditional terms and like what we, again, this is Web 3.0 versus 2.0. We're all used to this, and I think that definitely helps. So I think we're running up on time here. We'll let you guys go. First and foremost, thank you both, Professor and Ben, for joining me today, taking time out of your busy schedules to talk about the California Blockchain State Working Report, and then shedding some light on the use cases, shedding the light on how it's going to affect our way of life here in California, and then also touching base on the other states that are competing to what we're doing here in California, the same thing, right? So thank you guys for talking about that and discussing that, and for the audience, it's not just cryptocurrency. We're talking about distributed ledgers. We're talking about old marriage records and birth certificates. I mean, it's touching everything. So first and foremost, thank you both for joining today.
Thank you.
Thanks so much, Adam.
And for all of you that want to catch the full interview, please visit ri2020.io, or you can visit the Reimagine 2020 YouTube channel. So that's it for today. Again, thank you guys and enjoy your weekend, and I'll see you guys soon, hopefully.
Take care. Keep cool.
Thanks. Bye.
Bye-bye.